Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome all the attendees to HARA webinar PRRT series. This series consists of 6 parts. Today, our speakers will be talking on the first part of the PRRT series under the topic Defining a Tourism Crisis, Ranking the Severity of Crisis Events. Please join me to welcome our guest speakers, Mr. Bert Van Wolbeek, who is the Managing Director of the Winning Edge and Chairman of PARA Thailand Chapter and PARA Rapid Recovery Task Force, and Dr. David Berman, Senior Lecturer from University of Technology, Sydney and acclaimed Tourism Crisis Management author. Before I leave the floor to our speakers, for any question you may have, please send in by typing in the question box, as all attendees will be in a listening mode only. All the questions will be answered at the end of the session. So now it is about time. Dr. David and Mr. Bert, I will leave the floor to you, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Monica, and welcome to everybody from around everywhere. We understand we've got people registered from the UK right through to Texas, and to New York City, I beg your pardon, and everywhere in between. So very warm welcome to all of you. This evening we're going to be talking about the concept of bouncing back and looking at tourism risk, crisis and recovery management. Just to look at the webinars over the next few months, we're running a series, as you can see, of 5 of them, going through from the 8th of May through to the 11th of September. And please, if you've registered, please keep those dates in your diary. We look forward to having you join us for all of the various sessions. Okay, so when we talk about tourism risk, crisis and recovery, the concept of risk covers everything from economic crises, terrorism, natural disasters, in fact, diseases, epidemics, in fact, all sorts of crises. And of course, all of these have a huge impact on the tourism industry. As you can see here, I've listed quite a number of those which are major ones, and in fact, of course, in recent years we've had issues as varied as flus, crime, food poisoning, issues that affect our businesses. Okay, if we move along. If we look at some particular risks that affect just tourism organisations by themselves, I often talk to my students about the concept of disintermediation, which means that travel agents sometimes get cut out of the sales distribution arrangement, and that, of course, is a big challenge for them. We've got challenges of yield as the customers want more for less. We also too have, for many members of PARTA, the cost of oil, of course, has a huge impact, obviously, on the way in which we price our products and how competitive we can actually be. Okay, we're going to be focusing on what we might call the 4 R's of crisis management. And this is a really big issue that we've outlined through our book, through Bert and my book, Bounce Back. We look at the concept of readiness, being ready and prepared for crisis, about response, about reduction, about recovery, and in terms of dealing with those, the whole concept of crisis, of course, comes from the Chinese version, which is really danger and opportunity. One issue that we'll be looking at, particularly over the next few months, is looking at about how we can plug up problems in the tourism security cycle. Whilst airlines and airports have done a great deal to tighten security, that's meant that other, perhaps more difficult areas to secure, particularly hotels, transfers between hotels and airports and hotels, are under threat. And always we're finding that that security is going to be a major issue for every sort of every tourism business at every particular level. One of the most recent events, of course, which got a lot of publicity, was the Boston Marathon bombing, and this was a classic case where public events particularly are very vulnerable to security threats. In dealing with those security threats, we always need to be aware of the fact that we need to have both overt and covert security. this is a really critical issue because when you have an event like the Boston bombing, it has a huge impact on the reputation of the host city as a safe destination. So I'm going to happily hand over to Bert, who will tell you a little bit more about the development of the PATA Rapid Response Task Force.
And good afternoon out of Bangkok, where the sun is shining and everything looks very fine. But Rapid Recovery Task Force is on standby because that's exactly why PATA started this exercise and this value-added service to our members to help you not only to build new business but also to protect the present business and even the future business. In a long process over the last 3 years, we came up with the PRTT that is working together, first of all, with the various memberships, the chapters and the major members, but is also now starting to look at working together at risk assessments organizations, local assistance people, relief organizations, so that we can all work together to create that network of volunteers that will help us when the crises are happening. So with a little bit of empathy, guidance, feedback and advice, we're really trying to put something together. As you can see, this is our team on the road helping for the next crisis, and that is driven by the Beijing Declaration in 2011 during our 60th anniversary, where PATA's interim CEO, Bill Calderwood, really pushed very hard for this task force. And with this declaration, the team of the PRTT got the freedom to start working on this. There are various objectives for this team. First of all, restore confidence in a destination once the crisis has happened. Secondly, reduce negative economic impact for stakeholders, and that doesn't matter whether that is members or not members in such a destination, but also very much making sure that all these perceptions that are created from time to time by somewhat exciting and somewhat dramatic media coverage can be encountered, and specifically within our organization and within the tourism world can be corrected and try to dispel such perceptions as much as possible. We also are looking at providing assistance, but only when the member asks for this. We will start moving and helping them, assisting the members to come up with ideas, to come up with statements of helping them, and of course to assist them by communicating in the destination and by making sure that through our PATA network we can also work together. Last but not least, we are in constant contact with organizations like the UNWTO, WDTs, etc., and with the national tourism organizations to make sure that everybody is ready and everybody is on standby in case the need arises. Once again, we're not going to fly in and going to take over. We are going to be in the background helping from wherever we are and wherever the team is, working and helping the different destinations in distress. As you can see, we have a team of people around the world. We have people in Tokyo, in Bangkok, in Bali, and David down in Sydney. Then we have Emma, one of the PATA chapter, UK chapter, executive committee members in London, and Walt Judas of Tourism Vancouver, also on standby in Vancouver. So you can see that one of us is always awake. And of course we have a system to wake up each other to talk to each other in case it is needed. All our communication goes by Skype, and we have the Skype network, and we have set this up, and we have actually never met as a committee face-to-face during any conferences. So we're really communicating the modern way. We're working with training, we're working with PATA members and chapter members, and trying to make everybody realize that what crisis is important, that we understand how people react, people that are in the crisis area, and how the tourists react. The tourists either being in the area or planning to go to the area. When there is a crisis, we have a whole plan, and we have a task force, and we have examples that we have discussed already, and how to take action, communication, posting the crisis information, of course helping the PATA affected members, and informing the PATA members around the world, and then working together through the communication people in PATA head office, through the stakeholders in whatever regions, also to try reaching the consumer. But our main shrift is to make sure that within the industry, everybody understands what's happening. So we're doing proactive training, and what we're doing at the moment is part of it. And we're doing reactive communication, and we have split our team in two parts. The proactive people are working on simulations, on deciding who will say what, on networks to develop, and on also travel advisories, where David will talk about a little bit later one more time, and working together. We do this kind of trainings. We also do trainings for chapters, and as an example, in June I will do a training for the UK chapter in London, again enhancing the understanding. Reactively, these are the three people that are on standby whenever needed. What can we do, and what assistance will be needed? We have then, among ourselves, decide what severity will activate the task force, and that cannot be measured by two fatalities or 100 fatalities. It depends on the situation. We will then monitor and alert and develop an activation progress, which is of course then done within the communication and within the people of our worldwide list that we have of about 1,000 people that we can contact for support, for information during a crisis. Controlling the web communication, spokesperson very clearly, the chairman, the CEO, or the chairman of the PRTT will be the spokesperson, and the media queries again will be handled by the efficient team that we have in PATA head office. We have a whole activation procedure which all of us are having, where there's exactly described who is going to do what, and this is being handled by all of us, so that when there is a crisis, we call up this form and we start handling and contacting each other as per this activation, and trying to alert the spokesperson wherever they are at that moment. David, you and I wrote this bounce back booklet. Please tell us more.
We did indeed. We wrote the bounce back book in 2011. And as you can see on the slide here, it has already been translated into Japanese and into Chinese. And with the support of ASEAN countries, we are hoping that this year it will actually come out in many more languages. We actually have it in print form, and we also have it in ebook form, and it's readily available from particularly for PATA members. We've divided it into 7 parts. So part 1 is actually defining what is actually a tourism crisis and ranking the severity of crisis events. Then we focus on risk management and security, something that I'm actually now teaching as a subject at UTS. We're also looking at how we actually, once a crisis actually occurs, how we most effectively actually manage that particular crisis. Then we go to the next step, part 4, which is looking at how we manage recovery. And we're using particular models such as post-tsunami recovery. Both Bert and I have worked in Japan with our Japanese colleagues. We're also then looking at tourism recovery from security-related issues, and particularly looking at how tourism organisations and destination authorities deal with media, which is very important. We're also, part 6 focuses on social media, which is becoming increasingly important as a means to communicate to stakeholders and travellers alike. And then finally, the 7th part really looks at resources and references for risk, crisis and recovery, and that a lot of that is to do with how we work with our various partner organisations around the world. Okay, the first thing that we look at in the book is looking at how we actually rank a tourism crisis. I developed in my first book about 10 years ago a concept which was based on destination condition, or DESCON. So there are actually 5 rankings. DESCON is a global crisis on the scale of, say, a 9/11, or more recently the disruption that was caused by the volcanic ash clouds. DESCON 1, or Destination Condition 1, is when you have a minor issue which affects a very, very localised area. And of course there's everything in between. So to just explain it a little bit better, in the next area, DESCON 5 is basically normal destination marketing conditions with minor problems. DESCON 4, very localised problems. DESCON 3, an area, for example, like a whole country. DESCON 2 would be something which may affect a whole geographic region. Probably a good example would be the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004. And DESCON 1 is a crisis which affects tourism at a global level, such as 9/11, which affected aviation, or the ash cloud events. So when we start looking at focusing on risk management and security, risk management is looking at all sorts of different risks that can affect the effectiveness of an organisation. So we identify risks, we analyse the risk, we evaluate it, then we look at how we treat that particular risk. We then spend some time looking at the security system, and I explained in a few slides back that there is a security chain that affects tourism, and each chain, whether we're looking at airports, we're looking at hotels, we're looking at transport, whether we're looking at transport hubs, have various different types of security requirements that apply to each one of those. We might just move along. We've divided in part 3 of the book, we then start to look at actually listing different types of crisis management arrangements. So when we talk about reduction, what are the steps and what are the means that we need to take to look at dealing with reducing the threat to a particular business or to a particular destination? What are our response procedures? What are our recovery? Bert, in his book, which he wrote for PARTA back in 2003, Crisis That Won't Happen to Us, outlined many of these areas. And what we've tried to do in Bounce Back is to perhaps just add a few more different elements to that. Okay, if we start looking at part 4, the things that we need to do when we're managing a particular crisis is obviously to prioritise issues. So, for example, we need to understand how much it's going to cost. We need to try and look at making sure that we communicate very rapidly with our stakeholders, and, of course, then starting to identify the difference between places which are actually in danger and places which are not. Quite often when an event happens in a destination, we need to make the distinction between the places which have been affected by the crisis and those which have not. So we've got a 10-step area of look at recovery marketing, which we might just move along here. Part 5 looks at how we work the most effectively with the media, and there are different ways in which destinations and businesses can work with TV crews, with radio, with print media, and of course much more importantly now these days with social media. Okay, if we look at part 6, when we look at social media does present the opportunity for a lot of misinformation to be developed, so it's very, very important for any tourism business or for any destination organisation to make sure that you're first, you're right, and you're credible. And that's always making sure that any statements that you make can be verified, and also too from an organisational point of view that everybody is essentially singing from the same hymn book. Part 7, we provide a list of a whole lot of different organisations and a lot of different literary sources which can actually help us understand tourism crisis. I'm happy to say that in the last 10 years or so, the amount of academic literature, but also to the amount of industry expertise on crisis management has grown exponentially. We've got organisations like APEC, ASEAN, UN World Tourism Organization, WTTC, a lot of those organisations that Bert mentioned, which also have a lot of expertise in crisis management, and we're very happy, obviously, to work in cooperation with all of those organisations, because no one organisation has a monopoly on expertise in this area. Okay, so the second result that we actually had out of the PRRT is something that you're involved with as we speak now. We actually are sitting here doing the webinar. It's the first of a group. We did some webinars last year. For those people who missed out last year, we've decided to do them in 2013, and of course we've updated the webinars as we've gone along. And it gives me my great pleasure to hand back to my colleague Bert.
Yes, and one of the first tests, although we did not officially exist yet, was, of course, the floods we had in Thailand, where we had a very interesting and a very fluid situation where things were changing by the minute. One of the challenges the local NTO had was that a lot of the statements they would like to make needed approval from higher up, and that took a while. And to get the approval and then to have it returned and to be able to do so was, in these circumstances where things were changing so fast, not always possible. So with the help of the PATA and the PATA website, we passed on a lot of the information to our members, and the PATA website more or less became the source of information. After a visit to the governor of the TAT, we helped them and we started promoting or informing our members very clearly about the situation. We had people being interviewed, we had our CEO even talking on BBC, and we gave a lot of support. As you can see on the right side of the screen, we gave a lot of links. Instead of telling people, don't worry, come to Thailand, we said, no, look for yourself and have a look at this link and have a look at that link, and then you can see and judge for yourself. We even were able to link our website with some of the police CCTV cameras in the various areas in Bangkok, so that people could see for themselves that Bangkok was not flooded, as some of the press was trying to basically broadcast around the world. We used Twitter, we used the Facebook, and again we were communicating on a constant basis, helping the travel industry. Then when the good news came and water started receding, again we were the first one to go out. And again, with the help of CNN, we were able to also communicate what was the status of the airports and what was the status of the main cities in Thailand, and help them accordingly. We showed them what was the situation before, we showed them what is the situation now, and we communicated very clearly. We also helped other destinations, and what you can see here is what happened in Fiji in 2012, and we contacted the Fiji people. We helped to get people organized. We helped to get people out of the destination. And with the cooperation also of the Australian government, our regional director, Chris Flynn, played a major role in pacifying and then eventually handling that. Not much later, there was another cyclone in both Samoa and in Fiji that created a lot more damage than the first one. And it was interesting to see how one destination handled this situation very well by making sure all the stakeholders were warned, by making sure we have status report of what's happening, what's accessible, what accommodation is available, and what transport is still working. And then after the cyclone were gone, a clear plan of working together and telling the consumers why to return. In the other destination, there was a little bit of an example of how not to. There was a lack of communication, lack of information of the status of the tourism structure before, during, and after the cyclone passed. And again, not much communication with the stakeholders, telling everybody we're back to normal. So we can learn from this. It's not a matter of blaming one or congratulating the other. I think in crisis management we should really help each other and learn from each other instead of trying to just put blame somewhere. A last situation, or one of the last situations, was the assistance the PATA Rapid Recovery Task Force gave to Guam. Guam, a small island with 500,000 people, or around 500,000 people, and primarily with Japanese tourism. Their business is doing very well, and unfortunately in February this year there was a very unhappy incident where a gentleman hijacked a car, drove with the car, drove into a supermarket, and then jumped out of the car and with a knife started slashing people. That, of course, for a destination like Guam was a big situation and was something that made a heavy impact. This was on the BBC basically within a few minutes after it happened, and with, again, Chris Flynn being on the front line, he communicated right away to Pilar, the marketing director in Guam, and said, if there's anything we can do, this is terrible, we are ready to help you. Because not much later, it already became a mass stabbing in Guam, and of course, mass and two are not totally compatible to each other. So we had to start working on the perception. We started communicating, the various members of the PRTT started communicating with the Guam people. We decided to not make it a major highlight, but to put it on the PATA news at PATA as a second article and link it to a governor's presentation that he made already after the crisis, and again link it to some of the press and to some of the messages and videos that were very quickly available on the internet. We really helped them. We helped them to come up, and we're prepared to expect the unexpected and help the Guam people up to a certain extent to recollect their thoughts and to react in a very efficient way. Also by not naming it a Guam stabbing, but the 0 to 12 incident, trying to get the focus away from the destination. So expecting the unexpected is really what we have to do. And when people ask me how to do that, I always show them these few slides. Here we have a little crisis. A car dropped into the water. So we are trying to do some crisis management, get the car out of the water, and it looks like crisis management is successful. Unfortunately, as you now will see, it's not that successful, and because we handled this as a little bit of a crisis, we now have a bigger crisis, and we have to try to correct that crisis by investing, by doing it better, getting the one car out, then trying to get the truck out, and before we know, because we still didn't completely handle a crisis and we're not totally prepared, we needed the third crane to get the second crane and the first crane out of the water. So crisis management really means be prepared and do expect the unexpected and then react in a very professional way, not like what you just see. David, back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bert. I want to talk a little bit about travel alerts or government travel advisories. It's an issue in which PATA has been very involved in literally since 9/11, and particularly since the Bali bombing. The Bali bombing made travel advisories a huge issue throughout the Asia-Pacific region altogether, and particularly since the rise of the internet, there's been a much greater ability for governments, whether they're in Europe, Asia, North of the Americas, or in my country in Australia, to disseminate travel advisories to a very, very wide audience. And people actually do take travel advisories seriously. What we've tried to do to a very large extent is to engage with government, and certainly here in Australia. Australia is the first country in the world. I'm not trying to say this because I'm an Aussie, but we're actually commemorating the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the Smart Traveller Advisory Group, which is where an industry organisation or industry leadership in Australia regularly liaises with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade on the issues of travel advisories. Travel advisories really are a defence, in a sense, for tourists going from a particular country to any destination. Now, very soon after the Australian Smart Traveller Advisory Group was developed, the British were the next country in the world to have it, and Emma Cashmore, who's a member of the PRRT, our British member, is actually involved in the advisory board to the Foreign and Commonwealth offices. This also happens in Canada. We still don't, but we do find that there's a need to actually have a lot more consultation between the travel industry leadership and government travel ministries. So we, the travel industry, really do need to make sure that we are speaking to them, because the consequences of negative travel advisories can be very, very serious to many countries. And in fact, after the Bali bombing, when a number of countries put negative advisories out about Indonesia, this became a really big issue, not only for the Indonesian government, but also for ASEAN governments in particular. So what we're trying to do is to make travel advisories timely, accurate, very regionally specific. And we're actually seeing this is part of the advice that we're actually giving governments both in Australia and the UK. So it's quite important that we want to make sure that when a crisis has finished, or when it is much safer for tourists to visit a particular country or regions within a country, that the traveller is advised as quickly as possible. And we're certainly finding that that is working in Australia and the UK and Canada, where we already have this consultation arrangement working. Travel advisories also too have an impact on insurance, and also too on the viability of businesses. Or if all of a sudden a negative travel advisory says you can't travel to country X, Y, or Z, that could have an impact on tourism businesses, and it can certainly have an impact on whether travel insurance is made available to people who are travelling to a particular country. We don't actually have a magic bullet, but what we which is what we're trying to do, is to firstly make all PATA members and the travel industry aware of the importance of travel advisories, the fact that there should be more consultation between the industry and governments all over the world, not just in the 3 countries where we actually have advisories, where we do have advice. In Australia, both I and Chris Flynn, who is the PATA head in the Australia Pacific area, are on the Travel Advisory Board, and as you can see, Emma Cashmore is involved in working with the Foreign and Commonwealth Officers Consular Stakeholder Panel. we certainly encourage travel industry professionals from all over the world to engage a lot more with government. One of the key issues that government travel advisories do suggest, and something that we should certainly push as an industry, is to make sure that travellers who do travel take out travel insurance. Now, travel insurance itself doesn't solve all problems, but what it does do is make sure that the responsibility for making sure that you're covered starts with the traveller to a large extent. Also, too, taking out travel insurance is very, very beneficial to a lot of travel businesses, because for travel agents in particular, it's one of your best commission earners. And so what we're trying to look at, in a sense, is turning crisis into opportunities. One of the issues that we're actually looking at trying to do, if we can just move along there, is when we're looking at the issue of recovery, and we might just move to the next slide there. We've talked about crisis and opportunity. We might look at what we call the 10 Commandments of Tourism Recovery Management. So the first thing is, in terms when a tourism business or a tourism destination has experienced a crisis event, the first thing that we need to do is to have a recovery alliance between both the public and the private sectors. Secondly, we need to act very, very quickly. One of the most important things in terms of getting recovery messages out there is to make sure that people have the facts. And as Bert mentioned before, the biggest enemy for any tourism business or destination is negative perceptions. So we need to make sure that we have negative perceptions controlled by making sure that the truth is out there. Very, very important. We need also for businesses to devote themselves to recovery, working obviously with government. Critical issue, I guess, when we're looking at the recovery is to make sure that when we are recovering our destination or our business, that we actually build it back better than we started. Sandy Holway, who was the organiser of the Sydney Olympics back in 2000 and who was a very respected crisis management expert in Australia, his key, the 10th commandment of his 10 commandments is making sure that you actually build back better. That is a really critical importance. So when we look at what's involved in building back better, we look at improving infrastructure, particularly when places have experienced natural disasters. You want to make sure that buildings are better than they were. And a place that both Bert and I have had the privilege of working in is Japan. Japan is a wonderful example of a country that understands the concept of building back better, making sure that earthquake proofing in buildings is a lot better, making sure that we learn from mistakes that were made in managing a crisis or perhaps in our risk management arrangements, making sure that we improve our marketing, and very importantly, certainly improving our communications. One thing that the PRRT is very, very big on, and Bert's explained it very well, is making sure that we communicate quickly, accurately and verifiably. And of course, when we've had security issues and security problems, that we actually learn from those security mistakes. As I know, for example, India has done to a very great extent after the attacks of 2008. So one way of doing that is to develop a SWOT analysis of each of our businesses, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, making sure that we do risk audits in our businesses. So we might look at a risk audit of security, we might look at a risk audit of our financial management, we might look at a risk audit of our preparations for a major event. I'm actually teaching event risk management, and that's a very, very complicated area in which audits of risk come into virtually every element of organising an event. And certainly the Bounce Back booklet will be very helpful in giving businesses and destination managers ideas about how to actually develop risk audits. Okay, we might just move along. The whole business of crisis management, as you can see, has become a global concern. PATA plays a huge role in it, but we do it in conjunction with many other organisations. I've been involved recently with the UN World Tourism Organisation in running conferences which deal with the integration of emergency management and tourism. And certainly emergency management is a huge ally in dealing with crises, and tourism businesses need to understand how they can best work with that. We also, too, obviously need to work with government organisations, and I've noted a lot of government organisations now are dealing with are developing actually risk and crisis management plans for events that occur in their country. Australia released one at the end of last year, but I see them happening all over the world. So in terms of the way to go, obviously we need to look at managing risk and crisis in terms of global best practice. We all learn from each other. Bert gave an example, for example, with Fiji in terms of how it dealt with its with Cyclone Evan, and Fiji was a very good role model in terms of how to go. One thing that Fiji's done very, very well is develop a national organisation called the Tourism Action Group. It's worked with them not only in managing natural disasters but also in managing coups in the past. And I'm very happy to hand back to Bert.
Yes, working together, all of us, and wherever you are and whoever you are, let's try within our own organization, but also within organizations around us, to work together, to share information. This has nothing to do with competition. This has to be with making the world a little bit safer in a little way, and if even one or two incidents can be avoided by us working together, then all this work already has paid off considerably. As for working together, I'm very happy to report that on Friday, the CEO of PATA and I are going to meet with the United Nations. They have an international strategy for disaster reduction organization, which they invited us to meet with them, and we're now going back and see if we can join forces there. They also attended during the PATA conference last week here in Bangkok. They attended a session on crisis safety and security and the impact on tourism. We had the deputy commander of the police, Thai tourism police, there too. So it's all a matter of working together also with ASEAN, as you can see here, where we hope that this year it will be possible to start translating the Bounce Back Mukchun in the Asian languages. And David and I are going to work on a new risk prevention and crisis training manual, crisis recovery training manual. This should be where we're going to present the various chapters with documents, with information, and help them to also preach this gospel within their organization, so that we really can start turning crisis into opportunities. Coming back to the Guam situation, Pilar was there again in Bangkok during the conference, and I was very happy that she reported that because of the fast action and the way the perception was right away initiated, it has been considered as an incident that is isolated, and the tourism has not really suffered under that because of the fast reaction. So working together to protect our assets. But as I said in the beginning, it's the PRTT that can help you when you ask us. We're not going to tell you what to do. We had a situation in the latest earthquake in Sichuan, where we right away contacted the authorities both at the CNTA in Beijing and in Sichuan, expressed our sincere concern, and then offered help, which was much appreciated. But I must say the Chinese authorities are getting very good in handling crises themselves, so it was more a gesture of goodwill than a gesture of we can do and we are ready to help, but not we are ready to write in and tell you what to do. We're working together with the UNWTO, as David mentioned already. work together with the World Travel Tourism Council and with ASEAN. So we're spreading a little bit wider now and hope that that will have an impact on all of us so that we can all become a master of disaster. And that is really what we should do, because we have to learn that whatever the crisis is, we never ever should give up. And that's where, again, we, the PRTT, can help you. If you're feeling desperate, perhaps we know how to open the beak of this bird and get you out so that you can jump back into the water and into the positive business of tourism. Next webinars will be in June 12th and 10th of July, and we really look forward to getting more of you online. It's good to see that we already are much higher than last year. So please also, all the participants, help us to spread the word. Tell your colleagues and tell your friends in the tourism industry that this might be a way for helping each other, for working together. And with that, and I think I can speak on David also, and on my behalf, thank you very much for attending this webinar. And it is now over, and go back to how to bounce back, and over to Monica, who will handle the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Bert and Dr. David.
Hello, Monica.
Hello. Yeah? Can you all hear me?
We can hear you beautifully, Monica. You sound gorgeous.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Bert, actually we got not exactly the question, but you already mentioned it. Actually, it's from Kate from Para, China. She just said that, can you please share with the audience on the effective communication between Para and CNTA on the Sichuan tourism post-Yan earthquake?
Sorry, I don't know what wrong is with me. I can't hear you as clear as David can hear you.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello?
Now? Yeah?
Yeah? Better
you
now.
can hear? Better, right?
Yeah.
No, Kate would
Yeah.
like you to share with the audience on the effective communication between Para and CNTA, which you did just now a bit, on the stage 1 tourism post-Yan earthquake.
Okay, well, the system is such that it is a decision between the CEO, the chairman, and the Rapid Response Task Force on how to react when crises happen. And as I said in the beginning, it has nothing to do with the number of fatalities. It has to do with, A, of course, the impact on tourism, because that is the first criteria, and B, of the safety and security of the tourist in a destination. So, in the case of Guam, it was, and I can't say just, but it was, from that point of view, from the number of fatalities, not a big crisis, but from a mental impact, a huge crisis. In Sichuan, sadly, once again, big impact of fatalities. So when this happened, and we saw the second day that the death toll was rising and rising and rising, I contacted the CEO of PATA and said, okay, we should write a letter of concern as per our activation process, which then Martin did right away, and he sent a letter to the authorities in Sichuan, in Chengdu, where, as you know, the next PATA Travel Mart will be, and he sent a letter to the chairman of the CNTA. And first we got informal feedback from, please stay standby. At this stage there is no need. And a couple of days ago we got from both the organizations a very nice thank you letter saying or thanking us for the concern and thanking us for being involved and helping to heighten the morale of the people before. I can read from the letter from the Tourism Administration of the Sichuan province, which I have now in front of me, and I think you have it in front too. Do you?
Yes, we do.
Yeah? Can you see this letter?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it clearly says thank you all the friends for your concern. We appreciate and will forward your sympathy. Tourists were there, but no casualties were reported from a tourism point of view. The slightly affected in the earthquake, it would inflict a negative impact on it. Only 6 affected A-level are closed, and almost all the scenic areas are still good and safe. We would be grateful, and that's what we're doing at the moment, if PATA can publish positive information about Sichuan onto the website and journals and keep members involved that Sichuan is still safe and beautiful. Thank you for your concern, and support is appreciated. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, to support people, not necessarily write in and take over, but help them and show our concern. So that's in a very fast way. When a crisis happened, when it involves tourism, when it is within the PATA region, we will contact people in the region that can be members, that can be chapters, depending on the situation, and then write these notes of concern like Chris did when he wrote Pilar, and then see whether they are reacting and said, yes, please do help us, or whether they say, no, at the moment your help is not necessary, and we will stand by and not activate. Of course, when they ask us to come, we will activate, and then the whole system will start working, calling upon all the experts that we have online and that we have identified and that we can tap in as the crisis is necessary.
Could I might just add one very quick point. I agree with everything that Bert said, but I think, in a sense, one of the best things that we as PATA can do is to help make sure that each local area can actually manage its own crisis as best we can. We're there to support. We're there to also, too, as Bert was pointing out, to spread positive messages too when a crisis is being well handled. But probably the most effective thing that we can do, and this webinar is just a part of that, a small part of that process, is to empower every tourism business and every destination to be able to look after risk and crisis at the local level, because that's where we can really be of some benefit. And this is one of the reasons why that Bert and I wrote Bounce Back, and why we're developing other toolkits, so that that people in the tourism industry are in a position to handle things at the local level. But we're very happy to be there, obviously, to support and also to help communicate messages that matters are being attended to effectively.
Yes, David, I agree, but as, for instance, our friends in Guam clearly said, the first 24 hours they were so, dumbstruck is not the right word, but so confused, and it was a great help to get some input from some people that are not emotionally involved in a situation like that.
Yeah,
and again, by sending some checklists, we were able to help them to get their thoughts in the right direction in a relatively fast time. So even if you're prepared, sometimes these kind of things come as a shock, and it takes some time to focus again.
Yeah, agree 100%.
So much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any more question? I would like to repeat again all the attendees that you all can send the question by typing into the question box. Okay, Mr. Bert and Dr. David, while we are waiting, is there anything that you two would like to add on or comment more on to today's session, or any update?
Yeah, very. I think just a very, very quick thing is probably the key issue, and I think this has arisen out of the question that we received from China. Is the most important thing for any tourism business or for any destination is to make sure that you are prepared for those events which are most likely to affect you. So when we talk about risk management or risk preparedness, obviously there are particular places. If I just pick one place in the world, just for example, because I know we've got people listening from there, from the Philippines, what the events which are most likely to affect the Philippines, particularly in terms of natural disasters, typhoons and earthquakes. Earthquakes and volcanoes. These are things that happen regularly. So what measures and what procedures do we actually have in-house for either for the business or a particular destination to deal with that possibility of that particular event occurring? So the more prepared we are, the more ready we are to handle a possible, a likely threat, the less likely we are to panic from there. If we know that a place has crime problems, what are the security measures in place to deal with that crime problem? I know. Sorry, I'll pass over to you, but sorry.
And something that everybody that's listening also should not forget, we're not only talking the big crisis, the big risk, we're also talking the small risks. Every hotel operator, any tour operator has facing daily risks. That can be somebody falling from a stair in a hotel and breaking a leg. That can be from somebody walking out of the hotel without paying. That can be somebody stepping out of a bus and breaking their neck. And of course the bus accidents, etc., etc. So it is not just being prepared for the big ones. What each of the PATA members should realize, they should also be prepared for not the daily occasions, but for regular occasions. And within the risk management priorities, they then have to set steps accordingly. So please do not only focus and say, tsunami, not my problem, cyclone, not my problem, earthquakes, not my problem. Look at your organization and see where your organization is running risk. And that can be risk with the assets, that can be risk with your reputation. One bad message on Facebook or on TripAdvisor is as much a risk for business as the risk we were talking about. So please focus on the total spectrum of risks and not only on the big risks.
Okay, Bert's absolutely right. And I guess one thing we can all start from at home in every business is looking after computer security, data security, and cyber security. This is becoming actually one of the biggest threats for all businesses, particularly in managing financial transactions, international financial transactions. So certainly, I guess one thing which every company can start with is having a very, very close look at protecting data, particularly sensitive data about customers, and particularly sensitive data as it applies to financial transactions. And I agree with Bert 100% that it's not only the big things but also the apparently small things. But there are a lot of day-to-day risks that every business has to deal with. Quite right.
So Monica, please allow me to do one soundbite of advertising. The PRTT and PATA head office is ready to send people to wherever the chapters, the members would like to come to do seminars, to do risk assessments if necessarily, or even task force. So whoever is out there listening at the moment and you feel you'd like to do more, please contact either the PRTT or the PATA head office, and we'll be in contact with you. And once again, for those of you that are listening in the UK, on June 28, we will do, together with the UK chapter, a crisis prevention and recovery management session, a whole day in London. More details to come very soon to people in that region. And that's exactly how we at PATA would like to help each other.
Thank you.
And that, I think, is over and out.
No, we got one more question actually.
Good.
Yeah, it's from Joanna. She asked that, can you share with us the online and social media channels we should be following to find resources, news, and updates, please? Also, where can we find e-version of Bounce?
Well, then she has to attend our session, I think it's number 5, where we will grade in great detail. It's the session that we will do on rapid recovery communication in August 14, where we will talk in great detail. So this question is a very long, very broad question. I think from a crisis management point of view, what was happening in Boston was a typical event of how social media had a major impact, not only on what happened, but also on how the perpetrators were found. I think it's looking at that, and I think Johanna, I think is her name. Perhaps we can send her one of the bounce back booklets so she can read that chapter and
Sure.
get some more information already.
Sure, I'll just send it to her. And then, Joanna, for your answer to this one, I recommend you to attend all the 6 parts of PRRT. And everyone. Yes. So, we now we don't have any more questions. Our speakers, should I just finish the session of today? Hello?
Okay.
The
Hello.
first session of
We're still-
today.
Yeah, the
we're
first
still
session
in the
of-
first session.
The first session of today.
Yes, Bert and I are up very early in the morning to
At,
do this.
at 3:30 in the morning Bangkok time, we will do this same session one more time, hoping to reach our friends in North America.
Okay, and thank you very much to all of you who came to join us from sunny Sydney. I wish you a good evening or a good morning wherever you are, and I hope to see you here and see you in a month.
Yeah.
And from a hot Bangkok also, thank you, Sawadee Kap, and talk to you soon again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bird and Dr. David, for your contribution today. And also thank you all the attendees for your kind attention. I hope that you all enjoyed, and we all look forward to welcome you all again on the 12th June on our next CRT on effective tourism crisis management. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.